Alrighty, hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Serving Nerve, where we talk about whatever we want, and today we're going to be talking about why I'm not having kids / child-free TikTok compilation while I eat these cotton candy grapes, because, why not? Why not? What have I got to lose? I basically live behind a computer screen anyways, may as well eat grapes behind a computer screen too. But for a little context, my generation, I guess Gen Z, not having kids as often, more child-hating than ever. When I came from Canada, a lot of people in my generation, they did not like children. They really didn't like children. Personally, I'd adore to have kids. Got a little baby niece right now, and she's an absolute cutie pop, so I'd love to have a baby of my own. But I figure, not good to rush into having children, so we'll watch a compilation on why we should be discouraged. So yeah, let's just get into that. When you're 7 years into motherhood and realize it doesn't get easier, and you literally never want to do this again, but it lasts the rest of your life, yeah, that's the thing, is if you're gonna have kids, you've got to understand, you've got kids for life, bro. So, it's a calculated risk. Personally, I think it does get easier, but if they're 7 years into this, then the kid's 7. So it's still going to be kind of a young kid. Once they get a little bit older, it'll probably get a little bit easier just on, basic child maintenance, but who knows? Okay, well, that doesn't tell me anything, does it? Personally, I would say don't have kids if you think it's going to be easy, because I don't know, it's not. Nobody has the idea that having a kid would be easy. Personally, I would find that having kids, it's not going to get easier as they get older. The issues will just change. So instead of you having to change diapers and deal with screaming and crying, you'll then kind of get, put into more social situations with your kids where maybe they have issues with bullying at school, or they have social issues at school, or they have to figure out how to, study appropriately, or, get better etiquette, or become more competent in society. And then you get into things that are even more complex, like relationships, dating. And then you get into young adulthood, figuring out your life, going to college, figuring out what you want to do with yourself, starting families of your own, things like that. I don't know, when you get into that older age range. So yeah, I don't know, man. I just don't think it would get easier. Maybe on the basis of you being more familiar with it, but I don't know, man.
When I read the study Regretting Motherhood by Orna Donath, mothers who admit regret shot up to number 1 on the list of people who I respect most in the world. And that probably sounds really weird to anybody who hasn't read the study, but you need to read it to understand or listen to it. Because the truth is that we commodify and borderline fetishize motherhood from day one for people who can give birth. And I know this because I've been exposed to it from day one, and I knew from a very young age that I was never meant to be a parent. But if I had given into that socialization, that pressure, that commodification, because it is tempting sometimes, it does look like a fairy tale sometimes. If I'd given into that, I would be in a position right now that I don't know if I would even survive. And that's why parents who admit their regret, especially mothers, have my utmost respect.
See, I have a little bit of an issue with this because, when it comes to you having kids, portraying your regret for having kids almost insinuates that you regret your children. And I feel like if you're the child in that situation, it would be such a penalization and so hurtful to your very, existence, hearing your parents say, I regret having kids. I regret having you. Now, I don't know what this study is that this person's talking about. I'll have to check it out later. But the one thing that I find incredibly interesting about this is this person doesn't seem to have had kids. They don't seem to have portrayed that they had kids. And yet they have the temptation there. And they say fetishization, or the fetish. I would say it's more a romanticized perspective than a fetishized perspective. Some people have pregnancy kinks and stuff like that. Some people find it maybe fetishy to have kids, but I think it's more so that people have a romantic perception or a romanticized view of the idea of having that perfect white picket fence, having kids. It'll be wonderful, it'll be beautiful, and I'll live that virtuous, perfect parent life. And for a lot of people, that's just not the case. But saying that, this also kind of makes me think we as humans do, from what this person has also portrayed, want at times to have kids. It's a biological drive. We are literally designed at certain points to desire reproduction, particularly in those kinds of earlier years in some regards. So I don't really see anything wrong with the idea of wanting to have kids. It's not even that societally ingrained anymore, in my opinion. I hear more commonly these days, especially coming from Canada, but even outside of Canada, I don't want kids, Nobody should have kids. They're bad for the environment, populations, too high, whatever. And then at the same time, I hear people saying, like, I don't want kids, they're terrible, and blah, 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 and they're nothing but a burden and a nuisance, and whatever. I don't really hear a lot of people being pro-kid these days. That might just be me, but, like, I just don't hear it very commonly. Like, I don't really agree 100%. I think that it's very normal to want to have kids. I think it's completely reasonable and respectable, and I don't think you should portray your regret about having kids. I know it's kind of hard to say this because at the same time, you know, you don't want to be bottling up your feelings and stuff, but what would you rather do? Talk about this maybe to somebody like a therapist, maybe not write an entire, like, study about it or something, I don't know, but instead, like, talk about this personally with somebody who you can confide in without maybe your kids finding out that you regret having them, because that would actually kind of hurt, I think.
I don't understand why you don't want to give me grandbabies. Having kids is a blessing. It's a gift from God. Your generation just doesn't understand that. You know,
I just want to point out, this girl in the corner, completely useless. This girl right here, as I wave my mouse over top of her, completely useless. I don't know why she's inserted herself into this. You're just existing there. You barely agree with the current circumstance that is being portrayed. You're literally just existing on the screen to, like, rip somebody's video. I hate it. But the other thing I have to point out is, this guy says, our parents now.
I don't understand why you don't want to give me grandbabies. Having kids is a blessing. It's a gift from God. Your generation just doesn't understand that. You know how hard it is to have kids?
Our parents when we were growing up.
How hard I have to work just to keep this house from imploding. The amount of hours I have to work just to fucking feed you. You'll never understand how fucking hard it is to be a
I actually agree with that. That might be one reason why the current generation has less of an inclination to have kids, is the amount of complaint and stress put on, like, you know, you when you're growing up pertaining to your parents, going like, this is a really difficult thing I have to do. I have to do all these things as an adult, as your parent. Like, there's a lot of pressure on me. I can't believe that this is my life, blah, blah, blah. And then you already have that negative connotation with having children. You have the perception that this is going to be an incredibly difficult circumstance for you, and it's undesirable in every capacity, in spite of any fulfilling, like, elements to it, which having kids is going to be difficult. It's going to be stressful as fuck. But there are certain points where you're going to not regret it, at least. Like, it's a fulfilling element to one's life in many capacities. So I really don't see anything wrong with it for people who want to have kids. In fact, I do feel like with new age feminism, the current generations, the poor perceptions that people have towards having kids, and a series of political variables, I feel like a lot of the time, like, there is that constant, like, stigmatization for you being a young adult or an adult nowadays and wanting to have kids. Like, I've seen more people have a poor perspective on somebody having kids than not having kids, which is crazy, because if you told somebody that 20 years ago, they'd be like, what are you talking about, you psycho? Like, it's just really interesting how the times change, dude.
What is something that you'll get a lot of hate for if you say it out loud?
That a lot of parents out there regret having kids. A lot of women have been sold on the idea that being a mother is everything, and that if you don't have kids, then what good are you? And then once they have kids, it's not all flowers and roses like they've been told. Nobody tells the truth about the real cost in having kids. Babies are born sick and they have ailments. Partners can't handle it and they bail. And then it's a great disappointment that the child grows up to be something totally different than the idea that you have in your head.
That's actually completely reasonable. It is difficult to get a fortified relationship when also kids come into the equation. That creates more issue. But the other thing that I have to point out is, you guys know the whole trad wife trend? For some reason, I'm reminded heartily of that when I look at this and hear this girl talking, because I think that is going to be the zone where people kind of regret, like, their decision making. I could be wrong, but I think the trad wife trend is a great indicator of people thinking that it's going to be sunshine and rainbows to be a trad wife and live that trad life, and then they're not going to be happy with the circumstances, and then they find they're locked down with kids and no job and one income stream and operating traditionally. When in reality, it's not sunshine and rainbows. And I think, again, like, I don't know who thinks that having kids is gonna be all sunshine and rainbows. Like, everybody knows babies cry, they crap their pants, they need to be constantly fed. It's like 10 times harder than owning a dog and taking care of a dog. Like, I don't think a lot of people think it's gonna be easy. If anything, people are gonna think it's difficult. I don't know who thinks otherwise. Like, I've never met anybody who thinks, oh yeah, having kids is gonna be easy. Never. I don't think I've ever met a single human being on planet Earth, any age range, who's thought, yeah, having kids is going to be easy. I've heard people who've had kids say it's hard, and I've also heard people say it's easy and you figure it out. But I've never heard anybody say, with like an inflated perspective, never having had kids, that it's easy. I've never heard anybody say that before.
And once the resentment sets in, they tend to lash out at people who chose not to have children. Mostly out of jealousy because they have the freedom to do things while you still have a child attached to your hip. So if you're considering having kids, think long and hard, because having a child is a lifelong commitment. It doesn't end when the kid turns 18. It lasts a lifetime.
I can appreciate that perspective. And also, I think in young adults that like having kids and then resenting other people for not having kids thing is quite common, just because you want to go out with your friends and they don't want to, you know, be with you when you've got a baby. So you resent them in some capacity and have to find a whole new friend group in order to like basically just socialize. And that friend group also has to be very kid friendly or have kids themselves. Like my older sister, she just had her kid. She's been looking like crazy to find other young moms, because then it's somebody you can talk to, you can hang out with, you kind of know each other's plight, you understand like, hey, I gotta change my kid, hey, I gotta do this thing. Like she can't go out and party unless somebody's watching her kid. So she kind of gets that, and like she made that calculation. But some parents won't think about that. They'll get pregnant and then they'll be like, oh, well, I want to go out with my friends. Oh, but I can't because I have a kid. Now, I really like how this person says it's a lifetime commitment and whatnot. But yeah, again, like, you know, it is. It really is. The resenting other people for not having kids thing, I'm sure is a thing. I just don't know about, like, portraying your regret with having kids. I think that's actually, like, maybe not good. Like, you shouldn't regret it. It was a decision that you made. Nobody else made it. But I can see why some people would have that regret. It's just kind of disappointing. I hope that's not a commonality, though.
I'm one of those women who is 99% sure that they do not want kids. This is something that I have been open about for as long as I can remember. I'm almost 31. I am married. This is something that I brought up to my now husband when we first started dating. He was obviously cool with still marrying me with the possibility that we'd never have kids. But I thought that this would be something interesting to talk about, because most of the time when people hear that I don't want kids, they think it's because, you know, I want freedom and I want to be able to go travel whenever I want to. I don't want to deal with the sleepless nights and all of just the stress that comes with having a child. And that really is part of it, but I think it goes deeper than that. So to backtrack a little bit,
what if it weren't deep at all and she's like, yeah, I just don't want to get fat? I think that'd be kind of funny.
The day I was talking to a friend, and most of my friends, when they get to that point where they're ready to start having kids, I can feel that they feel very tense about telling me that, because they know that I'm that person that really doesn't like kids, doesn't want kids. And of course, I'm always going to be happy for my friends if that's something that they genuinely want. But I asked this friend that came to me and told me that her and her husband are getting to the point where they're ready to start trying to have kids. I said, what is that feeling like to know that you're ready for that? Like, what kind of gets you to that place that you are now? And she was telling me that when she saw other people announce that they were pregnant, she felt this longing inside of her to experience that. And she started, you know, seeing other families out and about with kids and started thinking like, that's really something that I want. It's just this like internal feeling, this internal urge. And I was telling her that I have literally never felt that in my life.
Yeah, that's called baby fever, bro. Like, you see your friends starting to have kids and you're like, oh my god, I also want a kid. Like, oh my god, that'd be so fun. I want a baby. I've also done the same thing, and I'm not even 30 yet. I'm 25 right now, and I actually really would love to have a kid, but I've always been like, I can't afford it. Like, financial stability comes first, bro. I wouldn't want my kid growing up, like, poor as hell. That would suck. It wouldn't be the worst thing, but it would kind of suck. But when I see people who are, like, really not into kids, there's actually going to be this point where you're the weird one, in my opinion, in your 30s, not settling down having kids. Like, sure, this girl's got her guy, but not having kids after a certain age range starts looking odd to a lot of people, which I find very interesting, and I just wanted to mention.
I've never had that feeling or that natural urge or that desire to be pregnant or to have a baby. When I see babies, there's nothing that draws me to them. It's not that I'm repulsed by babies. I don't care for them. It's honestly kind of like how some people have that urge to run a marathon, even if they're not in shape, if they've never been a runner in their life, because they feel like that is something that they just have to check off their list. They just have to do it to feel like they've lived. Whereas I feel the same way about babies and marathons. I don't need either of those to make my life feel complete.
See, I feel like it's weird comparing childbirth to a marathon, mainly because, like, they're kind of two different things. Having kids, a lot of the time, it's not going to be like, oh, I'm just checking it off my list. Like, I've never done it before, but I'm just checking it off my list. But when you get older in age, you find that your financial stability and your kind of ability to start a family are there. So when you get to a point where you're like comfortable and you're stable, you kind of want to expand in some regard. Some people do that with their career. Some people do that with like building things or doing projects, and other people have it with starting a family. I think that's the things. I think a lot of people actually just want to expand on their lives and experience more to life. And when you get comfortable in life, you want something else to garner fulfillment. I think it's actually got to do with living a fulfilling life a lot of the time with starting a family, like getting married, having kids, having that white picket fence life. A lot of people want that. So yeah, that's my opinion. But tell me what you guys think in the comments below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What do you think about not having kids or having kids? So yeah, that was the video, and I hope you all enjoyed. I'll see you all next time, my people, and it has been lovely. Slater.